Before I talk about the myths, I wanted to kind of share with you some of what wind energy does. The state of Iowa now gets 62% of the entire state's electricity comes from wind energy. Kansas gets 52% of the entire state's electricity comes from wind turbines. Oklahoma's 44%. Texas has 15,000 wind turbines. They're the largest producer of electricity by wind in the country. They actually do about 28% of the entire United States wind energy. And the company, you may have seen the wind turbine in the lobby, the atrium there. That machine is manufactured in Norman, Oklahoma. It's a small one. It's designed for farms and small businesses. But let's address those myths. The first one is that they kill birds. They do occasionally. But last year, it's estimated between 1.2 billion and 3.4 billion birds were killed flying into windows. Especially like your skyscrapers, you know how they kind of mirror the sky, the bird thinks it's the sky, and boom. Vehicles killed 214 million birds. Power lines, communications towers killed several million. And cats killed 2.4 billion birds last year. Wind turbines, 200,000. So I'm sorry for the 200,000, but it's nowhere near, what happens flying into windows and cats and things like that. So, and today they have tightened that up to where they really look at the migratory patterns of the birds, and they try to build them where they're not, in areas that are susceptible to that. The other thing, of course, you hear that they kill whales. And there's a study done by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and there's absolutely no link to that. They do not hurt the whales. Whale deaths typically are in entanglement in nets, fishing nets, plastics, ships. They run into ships. And it said that climate change, the rising temperatures, and then carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels is the bigger culprit for whale deaths. And then the cancer one, again, Mayo Clinic did a study. There's absolutely no link whatsoever. And in fact, the wind turbines actually reduce cancer, because as we replace coal with wind energy, we dramatically reduce the number of lung cancer cases. It's estimated that coal-fired plants, just this year, there'll be 1.37 million new cases of lung cancer that are kind of directly attributed to coal plants. So I think that kind of sums it up. Any questions about wind turbines? Yes?
So I'm always wondering about this economics of windmills, right?
Yep.
So, I'm Republican, so they always show us the windmills either catching fire or whatever. How do we overcome that myth?
So the big ones that you see operating, they do have a gearbox that holds 100 gallons or more of oil. Occasionally, they do have a fire. It's pretty rare, but it's obviously well publicized when it does happen. Today, wind energy is the lowest cost fuel out there. It's even less than natural gas for the generation of electricity. And the economics, basically, if private investors own the wind turbines, they buy them with their money. They qualify for a tax credit. The tax credit is based on the output of the turbine. It's per kilowatt hour, so it's not just free money. If the wind turbines work, then the investor has a tax savings, very similar to an oil well. And typically, like the offshore turbines you may see now, they're getting really, really large, but each of those offshore machines will produce about $1 million worth of electricity a year, each one. The ones you see on the wind farms are probably doing about $400,000 a year worth of electricity. And they have long-term contracts with a power company that they sell them the power from the wind turbines. And typically they're selling it to them for about 4 cents a kilowatt hour. For example, your retail rates are probably 12 to 15 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's a very low-cost form of energy. it's not perfect because doesn't blow 24/7, but it's taken a big load off of the need for fossil fuels. Yes.
Stay sitting. I'm going to come and sit with you and talk. I see this really big monster windmill. I live in Bocas del Toro, where we have a lot of wind. We have a lot of. It's either really sunny, or it's really windy. So, what's the ROI of a smaller windmill? Do you do anything with that?
Yeah. So my company doesn't do the large turbines. The machine that's in the atrium is our large turbine, and again, it's designed for use by farmers, small businesses, and it'll produce about $500 a month worth of electricity. There's a 40% federal tax credit. In some areas, it's actually 50%. So that's a dollar for dollar credit. You can carry that forward for up to 20 years. You can depreciate it just like you would a piece of machinery. So typically that's about 80% of the cost that you could write off. And then USDA has a grant program that pays a 25% cash payment once it's installed. So the economics are extremely well if you have a tax liability. We can typically show a 1 to 3 year return on investment. I put up my first wind turbine of that same brand in 1983. It's still running like a champ. The owners passed away a long time ago, but the turbine's been running now for 42 years.
I was just going to ask you. You have a 36-month ROI. What's the lifespan? So have you done the math on that?
The new turbines should easily last 50 years. The original ones, the small ones like we sell, we used a fiberglass blade. They worked pretty well, but we did have some fatigue issues. The new blades, we had some funding from the Department of Energy to update our technology. We went to carbon fiber, and we think that blade will last 50 years plus. Part of that funding, we're doing a life cycle test with the Department of Energy now. We're up to 24 years of simulated use, and it's like brand new. So there's only 2 moving parts on that turbine. So.
You just made me think of another question. I don't remember where I heard this or who I read this, but probably misinformation. Did they make them of balsa wood or sometime ever?
Well, years ago, there was a company called Goujon Brothers. They built a wood epoxy laminate blade, and amazing blades, really, really good. And so not balsa wood, they actually use Douglas fir, but it's a process where the epoxy is sucked through the wood, and it's a very, very strong blade. They've lasted extremely well.
Okay, and again, I don't know where I heard it. The point of misinformation is you repeat things without knowing where you heard them or proving that they're true or false. I think I heard, and this is what we're doing the myth busting for. Did they bury a whole bunch of them, or was there some technology or some, 1.0? What was the lifespan of the first blade? So, I remember Palm Springs, going out to Palm Springs, and I have a phobia of windmills for some reason. I have no idea. I used to jump out of planes with parachutes, and I always had a feeling I'd get stuck in one. But how long were the first generations did they last, and what did they do with the blades?
They're actually still operating some small farms with the turbines that were installed back in 1983, 84, 85. Most of those, though, have been taken down and replaced with larger turbines. The turbines back then were typically 65 kW. Today they're anywhere from 2.5 megawatt to 5 megawatt, so that's 100 times larger. And but most of those, and then on the blades, was an issue with the large wind farm blades that were being, deposited into landfills. But since that time, they have developed a way to grind them down and use them to make roads. So that should not be an issue going forward.
So are they going back and getting those out and redoing them?
Yeah.
Okay. So that myth it wasn't necessarily myth, it was true.
It was the truth,
But they've overcome that problem.
Yeah.
So a windmill blade today is going to last?
Well, I'm speaking about our smaller ones. On the large ones, they're probably still in a 20 to 30 year life.
Okay.
That's really not my.
Yeah, that's about the roof of your house, maybe.
Yeah.
In a good weather.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Round of applause for Kerry standing in for another man down today.